Subtitled A Saga of the Year 3000, this futuristic dystopian sci-fi action film surprisingly managed to gross $30 million against its $44 million budget when it was released in May of 2000. Loosely based on the 1982 novel of the same name by Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard, this film's star and co-producer John Travolta had many issues obtaining funding, eventually resorting to funneling in millions of his own savings to launch the doomed project. Until Adam Sandler's extremely unfunny Jack and Jill came out last year, this movie had the notable distinction of being awarded more Golden Raspberry Awards than any movie ever made. Despite this though, it is amazingly ranked only at number 93 on IMDb's famed Bottom 100 list, meaning somehow, someway, there are 92 pictures worse than this pile of trash. Opening with bloated expositional title cards, the plot follows a group of primitive human survivors 1,000 years in the future, who attempt to revolt against their alien captors, uncreatively known as the Cyclos. Seeing clueless human savages hunt for food in the burned out and abandoned shopping malls of Denver, Colorado make for some interesting visuals, reminiscent of the exceedingly more entertaining picture I Am Legend. Following strong showings in Saving Private Ryan, Enemy of the State, and Green Mile, Canadian actor Barry Pepper gets his first leading role here, starring as the protagonist Man-Animal, but he does a remarkably terrible job of it, especially considering his normally capable acting abilities. But his acting absolutely pales in comparison to the absurdly overacted and bizarre performance John Travolta turns in as the cornrow-wearing Cyclo brute who spends most of his screen time yelling at his co-stars in a high-pitched girly voice while wearing unsightly nose-breathing tubes.
Reach for the gun.
Sir, I might get shot.
Sure you might. And I might suddenly grow a third arm.
But sir, I swear it shot the Wrangler.
The report filed today still has my name on it. And you are out of your skull bone if you think that I'm going to write on the report, shot by Man-Animal as the cause of death unless I see it. Reach for the gun. I'll be damned.
Oscar winner Forrest Whitaker plays the deputy underling character, and his halfway unterrible performance saved this picture from a full sweep of the Razzies. The rest of the awful cast is not even worth mentioning. All of the characters are reduced to underdeveloped meatbags forced to spew repetitive lines of boring and ridiculous dialogue. Presented with an obnoxious amount of unmotivated Dutch angle shots, silly curtain-style white transitions, and extremely over-tinted and undersaturated colors, director Roger Christian's vision is quite painful to watch at times. Constantly wanting reprieve from the terrible dialogue scenes, when anything exciting or action-oriented finally does happen, mostly all of the audio is muted in favor of bland background music and foolishly pointless slow motion, robbing any potential urgency or entertainment from the picture. The Stranger in a Strange Land concept is interesting enough, as we watch the endangered humans explore the advanced Cyclo facilities during their various escape attempts, but the story takes far too many curious turns, like killing a character's father off-screen before we're even introduced to his life at all. Feeling like a botched mixture of the Planet of the Apes and a bad episode of Star Trek, this lumberingly slow 118-minute feature contains all of the worst elements of a hugely fascinating literary genre. Perhaps enjoyable with some drunk friends on a Friday night, this movie has little rewatch value and is generally best if avoided. Plot holes abound, bad acting, direction, pacing, music, and editing. The only saving grace here are some interesting story elements and some fun futuristic visuals early in the picture. A large climactic battle late is enjoyable enough, but if you've managed to survive the viewing for that long, you've likely already lost any interest or hope for the events on screen. It's astonishing this film received such a wide release and wasted great talent, but it's not hardly the worst movie ever made. Battlefield Earth. Abysmally dreadful experience. Decent concept. Now let's read some of your reviews from the YouTube comments. Here's the Ratomatic for Battlefield Earth, a saga of the year 3000. A 1 and a 2. You positively loathe this movie, almost unanimously rating it a garbage, citing the bad acting, cheesy effects, and terrible cinematic techniques. It pains me to say this, but honestly, I've seen worse. And there were a few short moments of this picture where I was genuinely interested in the premise, or distracted long enough from it not to completely hate it. Hardly redeemable or enjoyable in any way, I'm generously rating this only a bad, but just slightly.